There's a question that can define whether your life goes in the direction of joy and peace or resentment and resignation. It's a simple question, yet powerful. And I ask you to play with me and think, what's the first answer that comes to mind? Here's the situation. An apple, if you watch, the apple falls. And the question is, why does the apple fall? I know it sounds weird. It's a funny question. But just what comes to mind? Why does the apple fall? I've asked this question thousands of times from executives all over the world. And immediately people jump up with the answer, gravity. And of course, gravity is the obvious answer. Everybody thinks gravity. Eventually someone says, oh, wait a minute, you let it go. And then I challenge this person and ask him, but are you saying that gravity is false? That it's not true that the apple falls because of gravity? No, of course. It's a combination of the two things. On the one hand, there's gravity, and on the other hand, I let go. When you put the two things together, the apple falls. And that's exactly the question. Which of these two reasons comes first to your mind? Depending on what you choose, you will go in the direction of joy and peace, or resentment and resignation. In this video, I'd like to propose to you why this is so, and how to make sure you choose the right way. Your mind is like a flashlight. It has a limited span of attention, and this attention illuminates a part of the world. And that's why this question is so important. If you point your flashlight in one direction, you're going to see, for example, red. If you point your flashlight in another direction, in the same room, you may see a green wall. Now, is the room red or green? Well, of course, it's both. But imagine it's dark and you can only see one of these two walls. Where you point your flashlight is going to determine what part of the world comes visible to you. Now, in reality, everything that happens to you, to me, and to anybody, it's a combination of two types of factors. There are things that are out of our control, for example, gravity, and there are things that are within our control, for example, let go. So if I point the flashlight to the part of the world that's out of my control, I am going to see only those things that I cannot influence. Whereas if I point the flashlight to the part of the world that's within my control, then I can see opportunities to change the situation without denying, of course, that there are other things that I cannot do. But rather than focus on everything that I cannot do, I'm going to focus on the very things that can make a difference. Now, in the case of the apple, it's not a big deal. Whether the apple falls or not is not a tremendous problem. But whenever we face a challenge in life, the most fundamental decision to make is, am I going to focus my attention on the aspects that I can do something about? Or I'm going to focus my attention on those aspects that are not my fault, that are not my responsibility, and that release the blame from me. When we choose the latter, we create a situation in which we disempower ourselves. In some sense, we point the flashlight to the dead end. We cannot get through. There's a wall right there, and we cannot get through the wall. Now, if you only look at the wall, you're never going to see the door that you could just open and get out of this burning room and save your life. By the end of this video, you will have the chance to make the decision you want in the face of any challenge. You will be able to empower yourself, not only to resolve the challenge, but even to face challenges that seem unresolvable in a way that creates peace of mind. We're going to do this by focusing on three different characters, three perspectives, philosophies, three ways of being in the world and acting. The first one is the philosophy of the victim. The victim is the person that considers herself a victim of external circumstances, the gravity kind of person, so to speak. The second will be the perspective of the achiever. This is someone that says, I'm going to get it done. It's true that there are things that are out of control, but there are many things that I can do and I can succeed here. Self-confident, I'm going to get it. And the third is the perspective of the heroine. The heroine is a person that includes the achiever perspective, but transcends it, because not only focuses on getting the job done or achieving the result, but also behaving in a way that is perfectly aligned with her deepest values. And what that guarantees is that even in the face of difficult circumstances, unsurmountable challenges perhaps, the heroine can keep the peace of mind of knowing that she's acting with full integrity. The difference between a victim and an achiever becomes really important when you're faced with a difficult situation, with a challenge, some problem. So let's just take a typical problem and see how this works out. Let's just say that someone arrives late to a meeting. Now the person walks in the meeting and naturally somebody else says, well, why are you late? What's the first thing that people will say? I'm sure you've been in this situation. Or perhaps you are the one who arrived late. So what's the obvious things that comes to mind? Well, traffic, of course. I mean, traffic, or perhaps it's, I was in another meeting and it ran over. Now, there's something very appealing about these two answers, or the answers of this type, is that these answers are focusing the flashlight on the part of the world that is out of my control. I didn't do it. I'm innocent. It wasn't me. It was those idiots that were standing there with their cars and didn't let me through. Or it wasn't me. It was my boss who kept on going and talking over and over and over again the same thing, and the meeting kept going on. I was just stuck there. Sorry, I couldn't leave. I mean, it's so obvious to tell the story that way. Who could deny that this is true? But this is exactly the same truth as gravity. It's true, but it's the kind of truth that gives you innocence at the expense of impotence. Why? Because if you're stuck because of traffic, you didn't do it. It's not your fault, but you cannot change traffic. So in some sense, what you're saying is that as long as traffic is there, I'm going to be late. Or as long as the other meeting keeps going, I'm stuck. Now, is that true? That part is not true. That's what I mean by you choose the aspect of the world that you pay attention to. And when you pay attention to the parts of the world that are out of your control, in some sense you erase yourself from the picture and you're not there anymore. So you can't do anything about it. I'm stuck in traffic. That's what I call the philosophy of the victim, because you are innocent, claiming I'm a victim of circumstances. These things are out of my control, I didn't do it, and there's nothing I can do about that. Well, of course we know that that's the truth, but it's not the whole truth. I mean, it's true that there's traffic, but it's also true that you left late. I mean, given the level of traffic that was there, you did not allow enough time. And it's also true that the meeting ran over, but it's true that you chose to stay in the meeting. That's the blind spot of the victim, the fact that you always have a choice in the face of the situation. The situation in some sense is confronting you and asking, what are you going to do when this happens? And when you're a victim, you don't even hear the question because you're blind to it. You just feel, well, there's nothing I can do. I'm not in the picture. Things are happening to me. This philosophy of the victim is not something we learn when we're adults. In fact, we absorb this even before we learn how to speak. The first words we utter are generally victim words. For example, I'm sure you have seen a child, like my children, that comes and says, Daddy, Daddy, the toy broke. Now notice the very precise use of language. The toy broke. It's like the toy committed suicide. It broke itself because there's no subject in the sentence. The subject is the toy. There's no I. Nobody, at least I never heard a child saying, Daddy, I'm sorry, I broke the toy. I mean, none of my children ever said that. They come like, oh, I didn't do it. And I said, well, what happened to the toy? It broke. It broke. And where were you when it broke? I wasn't there. I just found it like this. So I've concluded that, unfortunately, I've been buying toys in the suicidal toy store. And the same thing happened at the table. When one of the kids says, oh, Daddy, I'm sorry, the juice spilled. It's like, where was your elbow when the juice spilled? My elbow, I don't know. No, but the main concern is always to say, I didn't do it. It wasn't me. The juice spilled by itself. It jumped out of the glass on the table. Now, why do kids do this? Because there's a sense of security in being innocent. I mean, of course, children need the love of the parents. They need to be in good graces with us because if we don't take care of them, they literally die. So it's a very atavistic fear that if my parents, anybody in authority, blames me for something bad, then I'm in danger. So this very, very deep reaction coming from the gut wants to say, I didn't do it. I'm innocent. It's not my fault. Something else is to blame. And this gets magnified now when the kids are together. There's two kids together, and they're having a fight. So, my son is strangling my daughter, and I say, why are you strangling your sister? Guess what the answer is? But I'll tell you what the answer never is because I choose to strangle her. That's never the answer. No kid will ever say that. It's, well, she stuck her tongue at me. It's like, okay, and then what? Well, she made me do it because by sticking her tongue at me, she triggered a reaction that I have no control. In a sense, he's saying like that, I'm like a robot. You push a button and my hand goes down or my hands go there and I strangle my sister. But it's actually her fault. I didn't do anything. She is actually strangling herself through my hands by sticking her tongue at me and triggering this reaction. Now, this is the pure philosophy of the victim. I am innocent. She's to blame. There's nothing I could do about this. I'm out of control. Now, these kids grow up, and then they become people in companies that say things like, sorry, the project got delayed. I mean, notice it's the same language. The project got delayed. What does that mean? The project decided not to come today? Or, I'm sorry, the file got lost. Like it turned the wrong turn in the network, and well, now nobody can find it. But this is the same philosophy of these little children. And of course, when there's a problem in the company, guess who the finance people blame? Of course, it's marketing. And who does marketing blame? Operations. And who does operation blame? Finance. Well, it's like musical chairs. Everybody's going around saying, who's going to be stuck in the blame chair? And everybody's trying to avoid that. But let me say it one more time. The price of innocence is impotence. If you're not part of the problem, you cannot be a part of the solution. So by describing the problem in this way, you're already disempowering yourself to do something about it. Now, of course, the answer is not to say, it's me, I did it, I am to blame. The answer is going to be different, but let's see what are the automatic questions that we answer in our minds or that we ask to one another in a friendly manner that trigger this victim reaction and make this problem worse. Because it's not just that we are individual victims, we create victim cultures, we create communities where the only way to be a member of this community is to collude with other people in this philosophy of victimhood. So here's an exercise you can do with a partner and really understand the power of the victim story and how grabbing it is. You need to start by thinking of a challenging situation, something bad that happened to you. And then your partner will be the listener. And then your partner will ask you the following questions. The first question is, what happened to you? Okay. The role of the partner is very important because he or she is going to be triggering your story of the victim by augmenting your story. So your partner will be asking you the questions, really colluding with you to make you innocent and to blame something else. So the first question is, what happened to you? Then, who did it? Who was it that wronged you? The third question, what should he have done instead? What he did was wrong, so he should have done something different. What is that? Now, every time you answer these questions, your partner has to say, oh my God, I don't believe this. This is unbelievable. This is crazy. You don't deserve this. This is terrible. I mean, these people are all the same. See, they have to really join you in complaining and blaming other people. So then they give you this energy. They really feel like your friend, that they're supporting you. So what should he have done instead? And more important, what should he do now to fix it? I mean, he broke it, so he has to fix it, of course. And the last question, what punishment does he deserve? What he did was terrible, so he should be punished. Now notice how sweet these questions are, because they create this desire for revenge. They make you feel good about yourself because it's not your fault. So in that sense, they're like a tranquilizer. You didn't do anything. But at the same time, they make you revved up with rage, with anger, because you have this righteous indignation that he did it, he should fix it, and that was wrong. So it's like 2 in 1. You get a tranquilizer and you get an upper in the same drug. That's why this is so dangerous. Let's look at a funny situation and see how these questions can illustrate how people get stuck in being a victim.
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are 2 people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's not enough left to do, is it?
The price of innocence is impotence. And if you're not part of the problem, you cannot see yourself as part of the solution. So what's the answer? How do you get out of the victim mode? Well, obviously, you have to see yourself as part of the problem. You have to pay the price of power. And the price of power is responsibility. Now, most people think of responsibility and blame as interchangeable words. Who's responsible for this? But I want to propose a different interpretation. So rather than talk about responsibility as who's responsible for this, I'm going to invite you to think of responsibility as response ability. The ability to respond to a situation. So you're not responsible for, you're able to respond to. That's the fundamental shift. And when you start thinking like that, now you realize that there's a fundamental equation of life. Just like Einstein had E equals mc squared, for me there's a fundamental equation of responsibility. And the equation that provides power in a person's life is to realize that every result, anything that happens in your life, is always a combination of a challenge, which is all the external elements that are out of control. Let's call them the challenge, versus your ability to respond to this challenge. And this ability to respond is the sign of the achiever. The focus on the ability to respond. You see, the victim will focus all the time on what happened outside. This was the challenge. This is what happened to me. This is what other people did. This is all the factors out of control that I cannot influence. The achiever sees the same equation and does not deny the challenge. This is very important. I'm not saying you create your reality. I think that's wrong. You don't create your reality. There are lots of things that happen that have absolutely nothing to do with you. You're not guilty of them. You didn't do anything wrong. It just happened. Or some other people act wrong. They behave wrongly and they do things that are bad. Now, but that's the way it is. You cannot control that. I cannot control it. Only they can control it. And if they choose to do it, I guess they will do it. Now the question for the achiever is, how do I deal with this? So rather than focus on the challenge, let's see what happens when you focus on your ability to respond. For the achiever, life is like a game of chess. So imagine that you're sitting at a game of chess and on the other side you have the world, life, everything, reality. Now this is a funny game because the moment you move and punch the clock, life immediately punches the clock back and says, it's your move. And you have to think and think, and the clock is ticking, and then you make your move, and instantly, the moment you make your move, life punches the clock again, moves and says, it's your move. And then you think, oh my God, the clock is always ticking on my side. And that's exactly the way it is. And when the clock runs out, that's the end. So now you're in this game where every second, every moment, life is asking you what are you going to do? Because it's your move. It's always your move. Always, every moment is your move. Now you can waste your time, you can let the clock run out complaining that life shouldn't have made the move that it just made. But you know, there are very few rules in this game of chess. Essentially, whatever life does is part of the game. You can't say that's not a valid move. If it happens, it's valid. That's all there is to it. So now you have to say, what is the best I can do to respond to this? And that's exactly what the achiever asks herself every second. How can I best respond to this? Because this situation is confronting me and is challenging me to demonstrate what can I do to respond to it with my best. So what are the questions that trigger a response of an achiever as opposed to a victim? Just like bad questions can create a community of victims, good questions can create a community of achievers. A culture in which everybody's thinking, what's the best that I can do? This is true support. But please, 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 don't try to do this right away, because there are a few more things you have to learn on how to support another person in a challenging circumstance before you challenge them with your additional questions. But just between us, let's practice what it would be like to do this exercise between friends in a space of permission to coach one another. And then in some additional material, we will cover the coaching basics so you can actually use this material to support other people. So place yourself in the difficult situation you described before, the one that you responded in the place of the victim. So very important is to take the same situation, because we're not creating a new reality. We're simply changing the flashlight, and instead of looking at this side, we're going to look at that side. So now, let me ask you the following questions. What challenge are you facing? Not what's happening to you, but what challenge are you facing? What's going on that is a challenge for you? How do you feel about it? What's important to you about this? What would you like to have happen? Now, after you're clear about what you would like to have happen, you can ask yourself, what can I best do to create this? How can I proceed? The ball is in my court. It's my move. What can I do to make this happen? And then think creatively on what's your best option. Maybe nothing is perfect, but something has got to be the best of all the available ones. Then, thinking a little deeper, just ask yourself, how did I contribute by doing or not doing to bring about this situation? This is the dangerous question where you can lose some friends. You know, nobody wants to be as the creator of the problem, but this is not blame. This is not a blame question. This is a question about responsibility, about learning. Because whenever something happens to you, you're there. So something occurred before, and you went through this process. Perhaps you didn't do anything, but perhaps doing nothing was exactly what triggered the process. So don't take the blame, but take the responsibility and ask yourself, did I contribute in any way? Did I have any sense that things might have been going wrong and then fail to act on it? It's just an open question. See what comes up. And the last question is, what lesson can I draw from this? Is there something I can learn? This is an expensive lesson, so certainly don't want to pay it again. So take the time and think, is there something that I can take from this so it won't happen again? Just try these questions on your situation and see what comes up. Every result is the combination of the challenge and the ability to respond. So whenever the ability to respond is above the challenge, you succeed. That's what makes you achievement-oriented. However, there is no guarantee that your capacity will match the challenge. I mean, unfortunately, that's the way life goes. There's no insurance that says, if you are an achiever, if you work with this philosophy, if you ask yourself, what's the best I can do to confront this situation, that you're going to succeed. It's impossible to promise success. That's why I call this responsibility conditional responsibility. Because you take responsibility, but then can you accomplish what you set out to accomplish? Can you make your dream come true? Well, Maybe yes, but maybe not. Nobody can promise you that. Anybody who says, you can do it, it's setting you up for a terrible failure. Because there are some things that you cannot do. And life lived with an expectation that you can accomplish anything, when the truth is you can't. It's just setting yourself up for a heartbreak. So eventually, resignation and resentment will come back into the picture. One very powerful teacher who worked in this end of the philosophy of the achiever, and what I'm going to call the beginning of the philosophy of the heroine, is Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist, Jewish, who in Second World War was sent to Auschwitz. Now, he had worked before as a psychiatrist, but when he went to Auschwitz, he discovered a depth of despair that he had never ever experienced before in his existentialist studies. He realized that the last human dignity, the dignity that no one could take away from a human being, was the capacity to choose how to respond to the situation. And he emphasized that the capacity was not to determine the outcome. In the concentration camp, they couldn't determine the outcome. I mean, he was beaten, frozen, hurt. I mean, lots of people were gassed, murdered, and those people didn't do anything wrong, and maybe they were achievers. They did the best they could to respond to the situation, tried to stay alive, tried to escape, whatever, and they didn't succeed. But the beautiful thing that Viktor Frankl discovered was that it didn't matter. For the humanity, for the soul, for the depth of the person, what really mattered was that they were choosing moment to moment their stance vis-a-vis the situation. And they were able to express, unconditionally express, their values, who they wanted to be. Not what they wanted to achieve, but who they wanted to be. And this is what I call the philosophy of the heroine. You know, a heroine is a person that is confronting a situation with a moral stance, not just an achievement stance, but in addition to the achievement, there's this question of values, of ethics, of what's the right thing, what is my truth, how do I express my truth with integrity as I try to achieve the result I want to achieve. This is the essence of the philosophy of the heroine. Another great author, Joseph Campbell, wrote a book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces, where he literally studied how every culture has an image of a hero, of a character, a man or a woman, that goes through despair, that confronts a challenge that seems absolutely unsurmountable. And in the face of this challenge, first shrinks all the way in, and in the depth of his or her soul, the hero discovers some truth that she is able to bring back to the world and confront the situation and give away this external battle after having won the internal battle. And then bring a gift to the community. That gift to the community is the lesson of pride, of integrity that she has found in herself and has enabled her to deal with an apparently impossible situation. Both Viktor Frankl and Joseph Campbell are phenomenal teachers who realized that the human soul is not conditional. The ultimate promise is not success. The ultimate promise is what I call success beyond success. It's the success of being true to yourself, the success of being proud of yourself, the success of acting with an integrity that's absolutely impeccable. And even if you didn't succeed, you look back and you say, well, I put my heart in it. I did my best. And even in the sorrow of failure, there's a certain joy and a certain peace of mind that this is truly what a human being can do. There's no ultimate answer. As Siddhartha discovered and then became the Buddha, you know, if everything goes well in life, I mean, this is an unfortunate truth, but he discovered the grim reality that if everything goes really well, we get old, we get sick, and we die. That's the best that can happen. And there's no achievement that can overcome that challenge. So the big question is, how can you be happy in a world where you know that this is the case? How can I be happy? How can we all be happy together, knowing that there's impermanence, that there's no guarantee that we are going to accomplish what we set out to accomplish? But the beautiful thing of the philosophy of the heroine is that it is possible, that the true success is success beyond success. It doesn't depend on anything except the integrity to express your values with the ultimate truth of your soul in the midst of any circumstance. Whenever something happens, remember, you're playing chess and every moment is your move. So whenever anything happens, stop your temptation to tell the story of the victim. Immediately, stop your mind from saying, this is somebody else's fault, they are to blame. Just stop it. Just say, no, I don't want to be a victim. And then ask yourself, what is the best I can do to respond to this situation? Become an achiever. Just ask yourself and think, how did I participate in creating this situation? What can I do to respond? What's my role here? Up to now and from now on. But then finally, ask yourself the ultimate and the most critical question. Who is the best I can be in the face of this situation? You do these 3 little things, and I guarantee that will change your life.